before I hand you over to people who actually know what they're talking about, I want to tell you about my recent obsession, which is bog. So my relationship with bog started a couple of years ago, and it was a bit of a rom-com relationship. So the first few years, not so great, you know, the girl doesn't like the boy doesn't like. But it grew into something very, very special. It started when I went on a trail running holiday with a bunch of friends to Northern Ireland, Mourne Mountain. And just before we went, all of my friends were talking about trail shoes that they will be wearing. And I was like, trail shoes? Do I really need to spend another 100 quid to buy another pair of running shoes? Pfft, no. I can totally do this in my normal running shoes. They're good for Victoria Park. Surely they're good for Mourne Mountains. Well, this is the group of friends I went with, who all look very happy because they are wearing trail shoes. So when we were running down that hill, they were actually running. Whereas I'm wearing my road shoes and I went down on my butt the entire time, which is why I look so happy. By the way, bog looks remarkably like diarrhea up close. It's not diarrhea. So what is bog, actually? Bog is a dense wetland of soft, spongy ground, very soft and slippery, consisting mainly of partially decayed plant matter. I think bogs are really underrated. In the world of ecosystem, where you have something like coral reef, which is probably a panda in the ecosystem world, like really cute, everybody loves looking at it, people love to donate for panda and save them, run marathons for them, everything. In that world, bog is probably something like a worm. Not that aesthetically pleasing, but really important. Try to live in a world without worms and you will not like it. So, bogs, how did they get formed? Exciting stuff. This is a little diagram that shows how bogs are formed. It starts with a shallow lake with a lot of plants around the lake that start falling into the lake, and they can't decompose fully because there is not enough oxygen. To decompose organic matter, you need oxygen. So they're not decomposing fully. The lake starts filling up with material that's not decomposed fully, starts forming a layer of peat, and on top of it, usually we get something called fungus moss, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing that forms the sort of compost where all the other plants live and eventually turns into peat. Now, the key thing about bog is the doesn't decompose very well, which is why humans have sort of a weird relationship with bogs, mostly because we've been finding a really weird stuff in bogs for centuries. Just a warning, the next one is one of the weird stuff. Well, it's not. He looks like he's sleeping, but this is a body that was found in Denmark. It's a man who was about 40 years old when he died 400 years BC. So 400 BC, 2,500 years ago. And he was really remarkably well preserved to the point that we know that his last meal was a porridge. The picture's gone now. So because of that, because of all the weird stuff that we find in bogs, bogs have long been feared by people, to the point where almost every country has a mythological creature that lives in a bog and loves to kill people. I think my favorite one is the Nixie. That's the Germanic world creature. It's shape-shifting. So, yeah, it's scary. Then you guys in England have something called Jenny Green Teeth. Looks really lovely. There's the Japanese kappa, which is something between salamander, turtle, and human. And in this picture, it's munching on human arm, just to give you the idea of what they love. And because everything in this world exists in Australia, but deadlier and scarier than everywhere else, we also have this guy. I'm from the Czech Republic, and we have something as well. It's called bludičky. They're half naked, beautiful, but they will kill you. Stay away. So there we have it. Bogs look like diarrhea. They contain a lot of scary stuff. There's some mythological creatures. But bogs are amazing. They cover 3% of global land surface, but store 30% of global soil carbon. You see where I'm going with this, right? That is actually twice as much as all the forests in the world. So take that, forests. Now, I don't want you to think that I hate forests. I don't. But in this case, when we talk about carbon storage and we talk about climate change and what we should do about climate change, it is, you know, good to preserve bogs and peatland because they do actually work. They store carbon for centuries. Unlike trees, unlike forests that when the tree dies, the carbon gets released into atmosphere. But why I'm talking about this, in the 70s and 80s in the UK, the government decided that it's a great thing to plant trees. I mean, it's hard to argue with, right? Let's plant more trees. So they introduced a lot of tax breaks for very rich people to get much richer by planting trees. And some very rich, smart people looked at the map of UK and found this bit up in Scotland that didn't have any trees in there. So they're like, yay, let's plant some trees. The orange area is called Flow Country. It's in North Scotland. It is a beautiful, beautiful bog. I definitely urge you to visit. It's wonderful. If you're into bogs, it's like your Disneyland. Everything's there. But anyway, 70s, 80s, lots of tax incentive to plant more trees. So these very smart people decided, oh yes, let's drain the bogs, plant some trees. It's going to be great. So they did. Great. It wasn't until the 90s that the scientists finally convinced the government that actually maybe it's not always best to plant trees. Maybe plant them somewhere where we have concrete or, you know, something else. But let's go back to peat. Let's go back to bogs and try to restore them. Which happened. It's happening now. There are a lot of restoration projects, thankfully, because bogs and peat is very, very important. Now, you are nerds, so you love homeworks, right? Homework for you, if you are wondering what you can do to protect bogs and peat, the most easy thing for you to do is next time you buy compost, make sure it doesn't have any peat in it. That is actually really important. 10% of bogs and peatlands around the world are getting degraded, and agriculture and horticulture are one of the main culprits of that. You can also try to avoid palm oil or buy sustainable palm oil stuff, because palm oil plantations are also often planted in places where there used to be bog or peatland. And most importantly, I hope you will like bogs. This one is in Latvia. If anyone is converted, I can give you a whole list of my top 10 bogs. They're great.